When Constantine moved the capital of the Empire of Rome to Constantinople, he diverted his attention to the eastern part of the empire, the area of Greece here, Asia Minor here. And this refocus on the Eastern Empire versus the Old Western Empire continued under later emperors who continued to live in the city of Constantinople, originally named Byzantine. This move by Constantine to the new capital began a split between the West, Italy and the North, and the East that only widened in the coming years. And we'll begin to see really two separate parts of the old Roman Empire. The split becomes really apparent under the Emperor Justinian in the early 6th century. And from his period on, the historical community starts to call the art that originates in the Eastern Empire as being Byzantine, including works of art that are sponsored by them, such as this church in Ravenna that shows Justinian with his court. So while we as historians refer to this as Byzantine art, it's important to remember that Justinian and others still thought of themselves as Roman. So the term Byzantine is one they would not have used. That said, they increasingly had less and less involvement with Western Europe, and many emperors during the Byzantine period, like Justinian, never actually visited the western part of the empire. One of the most important works of architecture associated with Justinian is the famous church of Hagia Sophia in Constantinople. The background for this building is that there was a riot against Justinian that was ended in 532, but not before it burned about half of the city of Constantinople. And as soon as the riot is over, Justinian turns to rebuilding his city. The first building that he puts up is the church that is immediately adjacent to his palace. The church that is for his primary use, called his palace church. And this is Hagia Sophia. And having that be his first building is certainly intended as a message. It's the biggest church anywhere in the world at this point, and remains so for the next 1,000 years. So that certainly is sending a huge message. What's most important for Justinian is to rebuild his empire. Furthermore, the church sits on the site of a church originally built by Constantine when it was destroyed during the riots. And it was one of the first churches that Constantine had actually built in Constantinople. So what Justinian is doing is showing himself triumphant over the rioters, showing his presence as massive and permanent, but also proclaiming himself to be the new Constantine. We'll be spending some time with this art fix looking at this phenomenal church in Constantinople. But there's a few things to consider as we look at it. First, the minarets that you see on the corners are not original. They were added after Hagia Sophia was converted into a mosque in the 15th century. Furthermore, the buttresses that you see around the sides are also not original, especially these massive ones here. These were added after earthquakes damaged the structure and made the dome likely to fall. That said, it's a very important church, and we'll look at it in some depth here. As you can see, the church is the standard basilica type. There's the nave in the center and shorter aisles on the sides. Here and here, here's the nave, here's the narthex leading in. So not much is relatively standard, but it's been altered so that the nave is more square. In fact, it focuses on that massive circular dome in the center here. The arrow here is the point of view that we're looking across the nave from the gallery level in one of the corners. But you can see from looking at the plan here that really, even though it does have the standard or echoes of the standard basilica plan, it's very much different. The nave is dominated by that dome, seems more centralized. And furthermore, the entire outline of the church can be circumscribed within a square. So it is what we call a central plan church. And this becomes the norm for churches in the Byzantine Empire. Central plan churches were used in the West as well, but where they were used in Rome, they were based on the old Roman example of a mausoleum. And so the Church of Santa Costanza, for example, was built to house the tomb of Constantine's daughter. And it too is a central plan church, but this is because that was the norm for mausoleum churches. What's happening with Hagia Sophia is it also now becomes the norm for churches in the Eastern Empire. So let's look a bit at the structure. Here we are looking up into the dome. The central dome itself rests on 4 triangular elements called pendentives. I've highlighted them in each of these 2 slides where you can see. And what they do is they take the weight of the dome and they transfer it to the point of this triangle here, and bring all of the weight of the dome down to the 4 corners where it rests on piers. Here's a schematic I've given in your textbook where we can see how the pendentives take that thrust from the circle at the bottom of the dome and translate it to the 4 corner posts. What this means is that the area between those posts does not bear any weight, and the architects can in fact open it up. And this is exactly what they've done at Hagia Sophia. You can see here on the wall, between the 2 massive piers, that it has been permeated again and again. 5 openings, 7 openings down below, and then in the clear story up above, 7 openings and 5. You'll also notice that these are all prime numbers. Our 2 architects, Anthemius and Isidorus, were both mathematicians, and I think prime numbers play a role in their design. This idea of permeating the wall with so many openings is a way of trying to de-emphasize the mass of the building, try to make it look as if it's lightweight and almost supernatural. All of the surfaces down below, the solid surfaces, are covered with colored marble revetments, very, very decorative, that make you pay more attention to the flat surface than to the solidity and mass of the structure. The columns are also built with colored marble. Some of them are stolen from other buildings, some of them are spolia, but the color of them distracts you from their structural use. And if we look at the top, the capitals that they rest on, and even the architrave over the top of that, are all permeated and pierced with these carvings, what we call basket capitals. And everything distracts us from its sense of weight. And that becomes clear here as we look up toward the dome. These upper reaches of the building, above the marble revetments down below, above the basket capitals, were originally covered with gold mosaics and with some figurative designs as well, which we'll talk about in the different art sticks. And so the upper level gleamed with these gilded tesserae of the different mosaics. This further diminishes any sense of mass that the building might have, and leads us all the way to the top of this absolutely miraculous dome that rests on 40 windows, and in the bright Mediterranean sunlight, it seems to almost disappear or float on a ring of light, seeming entirely immaterial. This is all meant to help the viewer's devotion that the church is trying to evoke a supernatural space rather than a physical one. And it remains to this day one of the most amazing buildings really anywhere in the world. After Hagia Sophia, this central plan church became the standard for all Byzantine churches. In class, we talked about the Church of San Vitale in Ravenna. Justinian had that one built as well, and it became his symbol in Ravenna in Western Europe, a very potent symbol of the presence of the Byzantine Empire, using this central plan church where most churches were basilicas. Even cities that weren't part of the actual empire used Byzantine architecture. In Venice, quite near Ravenna as a matter of fact, it served as a trading post with the Byzantine Empire, and they adopted Byzantine architectural style for the primary church there, the Church of San Marco. And then later, when the Ottoman Turks invaded Constantinople, Hagia Sophia became the template for imperial mosques. The sultans in Turkey not only converted Hagia Sophia into a mosque, but built other monuments that were intended to rival Hagia Sophia. And certainly you can see that the Blue Mosque in Istanbul, quite close to Hagia Sophia, built hundreds of years later, really does follow the basic layout of Hagia Sophia. And so, not only is this an amazing building to experience, but also it really is a very important one by setting all of these standards. First, the standard for Byzantine architecture through the course of the Byzantine Empire, but then later the standard for most mosques